Hi everyone, I'm Zelo, and this is my Mega Man Network transmission speedrun in 56:45. As of this recording and commentary, this is the current world record, beating out Mabel's, I think, 57:43 from several years back. So this game I actually only picked up just about a month and a half ago, and a big reason why I wanted to take it up was I kind of wanted revenge because this is a pretty notorious casual game, and I loved it as a kid. I would get decimated a lot, but I still loved it to death and played it through the end several times over and over. Well, I kind of shelved my GameCube for a while and had it in storage, and I just pulled it out about 2 months ago. And I figured, you know what, I need a new speedrun project, so why don't I go look for some GameCube stuff to do? And sure enough, Network Transmission was kind of looking me in the eye with the in the game library. So we're gonna dig into this run for a bit, but this is the result of work of about a month and a half of a lot of practice and actually not too many attempts. This run is, I think the first thing that got me interested in this run was Doisum's SDA run from a long time ago, and if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have taken interest in this. So shout-outs to Doisum. But he was the one who kind of propelled me into this, what you could really do with this game. And then watching Mabel do attempts several years back kind of helped solidify what you could really do. So the first stage is not very standard, I guess. It's kind of standard and not standard. I should note that I do reg sword at the beginning, because in this tutorial, you always get cannon and V-gun in your first 2 chips, or your 2 of your 5. So the sword is used for Fireman. We can just reg that and then have the cannons and V-guns for the end of the rest of the stage. So it works out pretty nicely that way. It's pretty interesting to note about movement in this game, because the slide's a little slow and janky. It feels like there's a little bit of lag if you try and jump out of a slide at the very end. You don't get the jump, so pacing that out's a little difficult. And also just being able to know the mechanics of your attacks. Like, you'll see me either jump or fire just as I'm about to land, and that cancels out the attack animation with the landing animation. So it's good to save a little bit of time here and there doing that. But den areas go pretty well in this run. The only upgrade I grab out of here is the mem up right here. Mem ups are extremely useful for the whole run. We need a lot of them because we don't have a lot of flexibility early on. The Buster is extremely weak at the beginning, and we won't be using it for the first half, so all our damage pretty much comes from chips. And we need a lot of MP to manage that. Now, thankfully, we do have a lot. We stock up on a lot of cannons during the early game, so it works out really nicely to be able to use those for the first several stages. And they're cheap to use too, so it just works out to just get a bunch and then just spam those for a while. And a lot of the other higher attacking chips, they tend to use a lot of memory points, but thankfully swords are very cheap. They only cost 8, just like the cannons, and having 80 damage very early on is very useful for the run, at least during the first couple bosses. So right here, we pick up a heat armor from roll. We do equip it. Heat attacks don't come up too often in this run, but it's useful for the first boss so you don't get 2-shotted by Fireman, and it can be useful for during the Color Man fight as well if he sends out a lot of heat towers. There's not a lot of fire viruses that we encounter, but still, it's still worth taking the time to go ahead and equip it, since it makes the fight completely safe here. So going through Net on Fire, not a whole lot happens here. There is a lot of cannon management, because I do run pretty low, and if I do not have enough cannons, I have to resort to backup strats depending on what other chips I've drawn. I do save 2 V-guns for the end, because the spiky only has like 90 health, I think. And 2 V-Guns is enough to kill that. And I don't even have to really aim them due to the splash effect. So it works out pretty nice to just knock them out instead of using 3 cannons. So we're coming up on Fireman. Old strategies, or early strategies, used to use like Bubbler. You'd preset Bubbler at the beginning and get a free 200 damage, and then you'd use whatever's left over. But it's not quite reliable what other chips you get, so we rely on Sword, since you'll have the guaranteed 400 damage that you need. Now he can do this flame body attack, or he can use the firearm. It doesn't really matter as far as survival goes, but if it's a flame body, you can quickly move out of the way, and you don't have to worry about deboosting through the arm. So it works out pretty nice. So the first split was pretty standard. Nothing too much going on there. Going into Gutsman's split, we're going to Red Cannon. We're going to be using Cannon for the next 3 stages. So thankfully we pick up a lot during the early game, and we can just manage those throughout. Now, depending on what other chips I draw during this Gutsman draw, I can do a few different strats. I'd want to get something like Bubbler or Shotgun or V-Gun, something like that. Any of the shot-type chips. And I do draw both Bubbler and V-Gun, so that works out pretty nicely for a couple strats that I'll use at the end of Global 1. Den 3 is pretty simple, but that one jump to get over that ratty, you kind of want to delay your last slide before you jump over the gap. That way the ratty has enough time to move. Otherwise, you'll risk just getting knocked off. So Global 1's a pretty nasty area for the run, just because there's a lot of really tight platforming involved, especially with the knowing how the B-tanks work, and just being able to manipulate their bombs so you can either jump around them or have them fire in the wrong direction. MP is also extremely tight in this level. Like, we need a lot to use all the cannons that we're going to use. Here's the nice V-Gun strat right here. You can use that to take out the 2 sorties instead of having to use 4 cannons. So that helps a lot with the MP management. But we also need enough MP to be able to kill Gutsman at the end. And Gutsman has a pretty beefy amount of HP. Like, I think it's 600, if I remember right. Yeah, it's 600. So, depending on what chips I draw, we have a few different strats that we can do for that. And I'm not exactly sure which strat I used in this run. We'll see when we get there. I'm not sure why I tried to fire that B-tank, but this was a little sloppy getting through there, but it's fine. There's enough health to deboost through. So we're coming up on the first shopping trip after we get this Spiky 2 out of the way. 3 cannons and he goes down. We go for a mem up and 1 HP memory right here. It's very important to note that I've accidentally ended runs by buying the first 2 HP memories, so I kind of base my menuing on what's safe to do. So I always try and buy the mem up first and then HP memory after. And I don't want to spend that extra 1,000 zenny. Like, I did get some extra zenny during that, but I want to keep that for later, because I want to be able to buy the Unlocker and Heat Vs for Noodle Man stage. So we just hold on to that extra cash. And that's the first power-up of the run right there. We'll be picking up 8 of the 12 power-ups. That'll be used to upgrade our Buster and use that for the second half of the game when chips are a little less reliable. Okay, so Global 2, there's a pretty tight cycle to make with getting around these bunnies. The bunnies have the really annoying zapping attack, and paralysis sucks, so that wasn't the cleanest execution, but we got through it and we didn't die, so always good. So ideally you wouldn't want to get hit in any boss fight, but Gutsman has such fast attacks that it's pretty likely you'll take a hit at least once. So I have the 3 V-Guns and the 2 bubblers. I use that to deal 200 damage, and then we can reg sword, and that's a guaranteed 400 right there as long as I connect with everything. Because there's no guarantee you'll get the proper sword drops. The swordies can drop the regular sword, wide sword, or long sword, and depending on your rank, it's a little random which one you're going to get. So I just kind of base the strat on, I'm probably just going to have only 5 regular swords. Now, if I had something like wide sword or long sword in my draw, I'd be able to use those as well for a couple hits and then switch over to sword. But like I said, MP management in that level is really tight, so you can't just spam like 6 or 7 wide or long swords. You'd run out of MP. Alright, so we're coming up to the point of the game where you kind of get to branch out a little bit, and you can do the next 4 stages in any order. We're going to do the opposite of what a casual run would do, and we're going to go to the bank first. Like, the bank is notorious for having Quick Man, who has a very difficult stage and a very, very difficult boss fight. But in a run, it's best to do Quick Man first because we don't need any other supplies to do it, and we can get a bunch of money straight away and just get rid of them. So the only chip we need here is Cannon. I've tried experimenting with a few other chips for the boss fight, and all of them just end up not really worth it because you just get hit a lot. So we just stick with Cannon strats. So we pick up our first reg up of the run. We're only going to be picking up 3 of those. And I never really explained how the reg chip mechanic works. So if you're familiar with most of the Battle Network series, you can preset one chip in your folder to always appear at the beginning of your first chip draw. And you can just use that whenever, instead of getting it randomly. We use the reg ups to be able to preset a few other chips that have higher memory requirements, especially stuff like double jump, which uses a lot and is used for a lot of the skips later on. Also quick lasers, these are great. I love the game design. So that at least goes smooth, but we'll be using some other chips later on that have those higher memory requirements, and that's why we pick up the reg ups. And they're very much worth going for since they're not too out of the way. So Quick Man is a very difficult fight. He's very random. He can do several things. He can charge at you. He can throw boomerangs in several arcs. Or he can just do a jump to kind of phase you out. What we want to do, we want to manipulate him to throw the boomerangs as much as possible, especially if he's on the ground. If he's charging, that's bad. And if he's just kind of jumping around, that's bad. But with the if he tries to throw boomerangs from the ground, we can get a lot of hits in. It's really nice that way. This run didn't have the best luck for Quick Man, but we didn't die, and that's the only really important thing, because it's very easy to die in that fight. You die in 3 boomerangs. You don't have a lot of HP at this point in the game. Like, at this point, I've only picked up 1 HP memory from the shop, so I have a max of 100, and the boomerang does, I think, 40 every hit. So this is a pretty common theme with this run, playing it at a very high level, is that you're going to die in very few hits compared to other Mega Man games. So a lot of caution has to be taken. So we're going to buy an unlocker to pick up another power-up later on, and we're also going to buy enough Heat Vs so that we have 5. I was able to get a lucky drop from one of the Spiky 2s, so I only had to buy 4 Heat Vs, so I'd have 5 total. So we can save that extra money for a little bit later, which actually did come in handy in this run. So Noodle Man stage has some pretty interesting platforming. We need to pick up a couple upgrades, and we also need to pick up 3 tree bombs. Now, I did not get 1 tree bomb from the first, I think, Kill Floor, I think they're called. I haven't played BN2 in a while, so I forget their name, but we need 3. 4 is ideal. There are 4 on the route, but it's not worth going back for a 4th one if you don't manage to get it. Like, 3 is just fine. Oh, that was a scary fall. I completely forgot that happened. I missed the bar grab. So we've got 1 tree bomb. We'll get 2 more on the way, and 3 is enough to do the run just fine. Like, we have backup strats. HP in this level is pretty tight because we have a couple damage boosts that we want to do, so it's pretty tight to get through everything. So we got our 3 tree bombs, and you can see the cannons coming into play. Like, most of the viruses in this part of the game are still pretty weak. They die to 1 or 2 cannons. So we can enjoy that for a little bit longer, because we won't be seeing the cannons anymore after this stage, at least not the regular ones. So we deboost through those spikes right there. Saves a lot of time. That spike that comes out of the ceiling above the log platforms is a little random on its cycle, so you kind of need to be able to make the adjustment. So we pick up one other mem up right here, and we're going to go ahead and reg Heat V for the fight against Noodle Man. Noodle Man has a pretty beefy 600 HP, but 5 Heat Vs take care of him easily thanks to double damage. And I would not want to do this fight any other way, because this is an extremely scary fight. I die in 2 hits. So it looks like he gave me pretty good luck. You wanted to see him do either just walk towards you or do the needle cannon. You do not want him to do his invincible attack or do the jump needles or the close range attack. But we got through in pretty fast timing and without any hits, so it was a pretty nice fight. Because if he does the jump needles close to the corner, it's almost impossible to dodge them. And like I said, you die in 2 hits, so you really need to make your dodges count. Alright, so a little bit more shopping right here. We're going to pick up 3 elect blades. These are going to be used on Iceman. Like, Iceman thankfully has pretty low HP, so we only need those 3. But Waterworks is a pretty interesting stage throughout, both from the chip draws and from a lot of the platforming. So I do have the Heat V still regged from Needle Man stage, and we'll use that to grind for double jump in a bit. But this stage is pretty interesting that because I have Heat V regged instead of something else, I need to be I need to improv real quick on what chips I get, because I still need some attacking chips to get through the rest of the stage. And depending on what chips I get ends up changing the stretch that I use. So I was very lucky. I did actually get cannon. I know I said we wouldn't be seeing it again, but I forgot I did get it in this draw. And it's pretty nice for taking out a few enemies here and there. So right here we grind for 10 double jump chips. The double jumps are really nice. They're going to allow a lot of skips later on, and it's definitely worth the grind for them. HP again is pretty tight because we do take a damage boost past this bear. It's a little faster. Like, we could have used the mini bombs, but I'd just go for the fast strat. No big deal. So we're going to do a couple of folder edits right here. We're going to preset Shockwave, since I did not get Shockwave in my initial draw. Shockwave is extremely useful for the mid-boss, and it's the only really fast way to do it. And we're also going to move a few other chips around. So I have Tree Bomb, Bub V, Double Jump, and Elect Blade put into my folder, and these will all be useful later. Now, unfortunately, since I didn't get a repair drop, like this is one of the few times repair would actually be useful. There are Yoku blocks in this stage, and repair actually is pretty nice because it reveals all Yoku blocks instantly for about 5-6 seconds or so. But it's not much slower to just wait for the blocks, since I did not get a lucky draw, so no big deal there. We're going to pick up our second reg up here. So now that we have reg memory of 24 megabytes, we have enough to preset both Double Jump and Elect Blade. But we need to make a quick side detour right here. This is to get the key for a barrier that would be ahead. So the mini-boss of this level is pretty annoying. It's a giant puffy that splits into several smaller puffies over and over. Oh, that was close. I almost forgot I died there. So Shockwave ends up being the best way to deal with it because it keeps hitting several times. And we want to be able to destroy the small puffies as fast as possible because we want to be able to farm more Bub Vs. Bub Vs are going to be useful for later on when we fight Color Man. And in several other spots too if we end up needing some backups. So you can see Shockwave kind of tears through them pretty good. If we had bomb chips, we'd be able to throw them and hit the upper ones really early, but it's fine. It's not too costly to just wait for them to come down and then cannon or Shockwave or do whatever else. So I do one last folder edit right here before the end of the stage. We're actually going to do a death warp. This is the only death in the run, but we're going to death warp after presetting Elect Blade. This completely refills our health and MP, and also since we get another chip draw, we can take the preset Elect Blade and use that for Iceman. So it works out. Like, it's a little faster than climbing all the way back up, and you get more resources, so it's worth it. One last damage boost past the Polar Bear. And then one last Shrimpy. And time for Ele Man. Now, Ele Man doesn't have a whole lot of HP, but I do die pretty quick since I have... He's pretty damaging, and I don't have a lot of HP still. So I kind of... Let's just say I space my attacks out very carefully to make sure I have enough time to dodge. I did take one unintentional damage boost touching him. The contact damage on him is actually not that bad. So if you're going to take damage, you'd rather touch him rather than touch any of his attacks, especially the Icicle Rain that pretty much just one-shots you from this HP. So it was a good stage overall. I didn't get any lucky chip draws, but what I was dealt with was fine. So we'll go on to Brightman for our last leg of this... last stage of this leg of the journey. So we preset Tree Bomb for Brightman. We don't really need a whole lot of resources to get through the stage. Any kind of a forward attacking chip will work fine. I think I get Bub V or Heat V. Yeah, I get Heat V. So Heat V is pretty nice because we can get rid of the Sparkies in one particular part of this first room, and then we can also use the Heat Vs later on to clear out a couple enemies. So it's pretty tight getting around all these Sparkies and the Magnikers, but we've got it routed out pretty quick, so where you don't have to wait very much. It's like, thankfully it's a pretty short stage, so you can just focus for just a couple minutes and then chill out with the boss. It's also important not to get paralyzed by tough bunnies. Really do not want to get hit by Zaprings here. These lasers do some pretty nasty damage, so I did wait a bit to make sure I was on the right cycle, because if they hit me from that HP, I probably would die. I think they do about 150 or so. I'd have to go back and check. Like, usually I'm at so low HP that I try and sneak past them and then I die anyways. So, Brightman, we're going to manip him. He's normally a very annoying fight casually, but if you just trigger his taunt and then time your tree bomb so that it lands during a point where he's not able to do anything, you can chain the 3 tree bombs together and insta-kill him. It's actually pretty tricky timing for the third tree bomb, because the second tree bomb will bounce inside of him for a bit until he's vulnerable, and you need to time the third toss so that it comes out right after the second tree bomb actually hits. If you accidentally throw the third tree bomb too early, the second one disappears, and then you end up bombing him when he taunts, and it ends up being a really nasty fight. But thankfully it was a pretty standard fight where you just get the 3 tree bombs in and you're done. Alright, so we've got 2 more stages coming up with, you can choose between Color and Elect. It doesn't really matter what you do first, but we just go ahead and do Color Man first. It's just simple for me to just think of it that way and just get Color Man out of the way, because he's a pretty awful fight, and getting him out of the way earlier is probably better. So in this first screen, we're going to see the power double jump, and we're going to be able to get a key very early, because normally this is a pretty long room horizontally. You'd have to go all the way to the right and then come back through the top on the left. But double jump allows us to just kind of skip all the way up here and grab this key very early. So that alone probably saves all the time you need for grinding, plus all the time that you're going to save doing all the other skips later on. So it's a pretty simple stage in comparison to the other ones. Not a whole lot of tough platforming going on. The only hard part is timing your double jumps at the very end to get one more upgrade. That's a pretty tight thing to hit. I did also draw Bub V and Heat V, which was really nice to get in my initial draw, because I would be normally using Bub V for the fight against Color Man, because he's got a lot of HP. He's got 700. But thankfully, you usually get enough Bub Vs to take him down. And if not, then you usually get at least one supplemental chip to be able to do the damage. Because you just don't have enough, like, swords. Oh, I forgot about that. I wanted to heal a little bit, and I ended up switching to Recuv, and I forgot to actually double jump over that clown, but I got what's probably a frame-perfect jump over the clown. It was pretty scary. Alright, so Color Man fight, like I said, is terrible. He can do several things, and you really don't want to see any of them. The only thing you'd want to see him do is actually just jump up in the air and do nothing, but he very, very rarely does that. So we want to see this, we want to see either the Flame Tower or the ball a lot. Because the ball you can pretty easily jump over if it's going just horizontally instead of bouncing vertically. Like, the vertical bounce is awful. But we got through that pretty quick. He did do a lot of horizontal hits, and not a whole lot of vertical bounces or flame towers. Like, the flame tower is a little tricky to avoid. It's deceptive. If you have to actually jump as the tower rises, and there's actually no hitbox at the top, so it's a little deceiving. I think we do get a successful dodge later that we'll be able to showcase that off, but it's a little tricky. You don't want to actually slide past the tower. It's actually easier to just jump over it. Alright, so coming up into Ele Man stage, we still have double jump regged, and that actually adds up to a little bit of time save. I didn't really mention this earlier, but if we can get lucky chip draws and not have to reg later on, then that saves about 10 seconds each time. So since we already still had double jump pre-regged from Color Man stage, we just jump straight in the stage and don't have to worry about it. So this is definitely the most tight stage for MP. Like, balancing the double jumps as well as the tree bombs needed for the Ele Man fight are pretty... It took a while to route out a good way to do it, especially depending on if you have 3 or 4 tree bombs. This is one of the times where it matters, because we're going to use, I think, most of our doubles. I think we leave 2 on the table, and that leaves us with enough MP to be able to use 3 tree bombs for sure on Ele Man. And then depending on how fast we actually get through the stage, I differ the strat between a 3 tree bomb strat with other chips or a 4 tree bomb strat. And if I remember right, this stage went really well, and I got through all of the platforming really quickly. So we end up doing... We wouldn't be able to do the 4 tree bomb strat anyways, but we do the quick 3 tree bomb strat since we have a couple other good chips in our draw. So Ele Man's pretty annoying. If you try and attack him normally, he blocks the attack, teleports behind you, and tries to zap you. We can manipulate that to our advantage here, but it's very tight because if you do get touched, you get shocked and you lose half your HP, so it's very scary. And every time you do manage to damage him, there's a good chance he'll use the lightning attack, which is really awful to deal with because the lightning comes... It comes at random points in the room, and it also strikes randomly. So here it is right here. So I just kind of wait that out to make sure I can dodge that. So you just kind of hit him, step forward a little bit so he doesn't zap you, and then just turn around and blast him with whatever you have. So 2 V-guns and 3 tree bombs is the perfect amount of damage to take him out. So we didn't have to worry about that. So it was a really solid fight overall. So, we're coming up to the halfway point in the game. We're going to do a big shopping trip coming up because we've been stockpiling Zenny for the last several stages. And like I mentioned earlier, we were picking up power-ups for the Buster because the Buster right now is worthless. Thankfully, we're going to be picking up enough power-ups to max out both attack and we're going to max out charge. The charge buster in this game with maxed out attack is absolutely ridiculous. It's like 90 to 95 damage. It's not enough to break auras, but it's just right under it. So it's going to be the main source of damage for most of the rest of the game. So we're going to go open up Global 3. Global 3 actually gets a shortcut when you visit it for the first time, and you can just warp there whenever you want to. So we're going to go to Global 3 to open up that shortcut. We'll go back to Noodle Man's shop in Outernet to pick up the power-ups, and then we'll just simply jack out and use the shortcut link to go straight back to where we need to go. So it works out pretty nicely in the route. Unfortunately, I'll say this now, the money route in this game is pretty weird because you do get random amounts of cash from a lot of boss fights, and the money can also fly out of bounds. So you can end up with a little bit more, a little bit less than usual. And in this run, I actually ended up with less. Like, I even took a safety half energy out of the route, and I still don't have enough cash to buy everything that I'd want to buy during this Noodle Man trip. So I was a little panicky at first. But thankfully, I later realized that you don't really need an extra mem up. You can get by without it, because for the next several stages, since we're using the Buster now, the Buster will deal most of the main source of damage, and you're not going to rely on chips that much. So MP is not very tight for the next several stages. So it kind of worked out in this run, thankfully. So we buy the power-ups first. We're short on the mem up by just a hair. But like I said, not going to matter that much. We're going to max out our Buster now. And we're not going to be getting any more power-ups for the rest of the run. We do not need Rapid. Rapid is not particularly useful in a speedrun. Charge Buster is definitely the way to go. So these 4 stages back-to-back are leading into the 0 count. And each of them has some pretty unique stuff to each of them. There's some really tight platforming the first couple stages. The third has some kind of annoying fights. And then the fourth is a little bit of a mix of both. So we're going to get use out of all 10 of our double jumps, if I remember right. We might save one. I think I did not have to take the backup at the end of this stage coming up, so we did have one jump left over. But it works out to just stock up on double jumps and be able to abuse the shortcuts. This is a really, really long room in Old Area 1, and it's so much faster to just jump straight up to the top and take the teleporter straight to 2. Like, if you were to do that room normally, it would probably be about a minute. So Charge Buster just absolutely wrecks everything in this area. Most of the viruses in this area only have about 80 HP or so. So it works out really nicely to be able to just plow right through them with a really quick charge. Like even the B-Tank 2 right here goes down pretty quick. But the Sortie 2s do take a couple extra hits, but it's not a big deal. But the scary part of this is getting past this heady aura. They two-shot me. And I need to get around this guy at the end coming up. So I do have the health for it, so I can take a damage boost at the very top and then just slide right past him. If I did not have the health for it, I would have to do a very tricky double jump under him. Pray that I don't fall off the edge, because those were all pits. And pray that I don't jump so high that I bash right into him. So luckily that went well. Swordman's pretty much a joke. He's a very easy boss at this point in the game. But he knows how to waste time, unfortunately, with this attack. Like, this attack's awful. You just can't do anything about it for 3 or 4 seconds. And he gives it to me twice, so it's really terrible luck. Like, you usually want him to give either the sword slash or the double sword summon. Those are much faster because you can either slide under it or you can just keep wailing on him while he's prepping it. So, a bit of unfortunate luck, but the stage itself was fine. Nothing to worry about there. So, we're going to make one side trip to Higsby's real quick for another shopping trip. We're actually going to buy 5 barriers. The barriers are actually pretty nice. They're going to be used to get through the end of this next stage, and they can also be used in the stages after. Especially, we definitely do use it in Pharaoh Man stage, but we can also use it for a couple of the boss fights if needed. But we'll get to that when we get there. So Gravity Man stage coming up is definitely one of the most execution heavy stages. There's a lot of really tight platforming that needs to go right. There's a couple cycles I need to make in the first room so that these rollers are in the right positions. Overall, it's a very fun stage to play, but it's also incredibly difficult. We're also going to be picking up some Mega Cannons from the Canadum 3s over here. I want to get all 4, and there's a good chance you get all 4 if you play the stage optimally, but sometimes you get bad luck and you don't get 1 or 2, and you have to farm later on. So it's really unfortunate when that happens, but I think we did get all 4 in this run, so we didn't have to worry about that. The health management in this stage is also pretty tight because I do need to take a very deadly damage boost that almost kills me. That's our third and final reg up. We will be presetting one of the boss weapons later on that has a pretty hefty account or hefty memory count, but it's worth it for that. And that one's like right next to the exit, so it's worth picking up. So we're going to get past these last couple of enemies, and we're going to do one folder edit coming up. Nice little double jump skip right there. So we're going to throw in both the Mega Cannons and the High Cannons, as well as the barriers that we just bought. And we're going to pre-reg a barrier right now. I kind of fumbled the menu because I wasn't sure where High Cannon was at that point. But we're going to pre-reg barrier. Barrier is really nice to just plow through the rest of the stage right here, because we don't have to worry about the B-Tank 3s or the last couple enemies. It also gives us a little bit of safety for Gravity Man's fight coming up. So Gravity Man can be a jerk depending on how often he wants to attack. Having the extra 2 barriers adds some nice safety. But I think we only had to use 1. So if you stand behind him, you can get a lot of charge shots in pretty quick. And he's not terribly threatening as long as you finish him off real fast. So it was a pretty nice fight. I missed 1 shot, but it's not a big deal. Alright, so we're coming up to Starman stage, which is one of the easier stages for platforming, but it has a pretty annoying mini-boss and then a pretty dreadful boss fight against Starman himself. So we'll have our double jump regged. It's ideal if we get Bub V or Heat V in our draw, because we want to use that in the mini-boss fight coming up. Now, I did get a bit of a different draw than usual. I actually drew Bubbler and V-Gun, and I figured I could improv with that, because normally we'd want Heat V or Bub V because when they hit, they kind of go in a diagonal shape outwards. And you get that with V-Gun as well, but it's a little bit lower damage, so it takes 1 extra V-Gun to destroy the mini-boss, because the mini-boss has 300 health. But I don't have enough V-Guns to be able to do that. Luckily, this is where Bubbler comes into play. Bubbler will do the extra 50 damage as long as I aim it right. So I figured this is good enough, and I don't need to preset Bub V for the mini-boss fight coming up later. Again, another nice double jump skip coming up. Skips a nice long horizontal room. Not a whole lot going on in this screen right here. It's a lot of little mini ledges. But getting these one-tile slides can be a little tricky. I try and go for as many as possible, but sometimes I hit early and you just don't get them. But that's better than falling off. So we do pick up a couple more HP memories on the way. We've been trying to get more and more because we need a little bit more HP for the end game when we do some really deadly damage boosts. So here's the mini boss right here. We managed to get all 5 V-Guns and the Bubbler to connect, which is really fantastic. Didn't have to worry about that. Because fighting that boss normally with just a buster or cannons, you have to thread the needle right in between the middle of the boss, and it is the most awful thing. So I figured this run's been going pretty well so far, and I don't want to lose it to Starman because he can be a jerk. So I go ahead and just pre-reg Barrier. Barrier is really nice because this this jerk has what can basically be an undodgeable attack. He has the Star Arrow right here, and he has the meteors. And he also has a form of the meteors where he summons a bunch over and over, and there's pretty much no dodging that. So I figured play it safe with Barrier. It wasn't a terribly great fight, but we got through it just fine. And I'd rather just take like a few seconds of time lost there than try and risk everything and just die. Because he pretty much just 3-shots you. Alright, so the last little bit of this segment is the Zero account and the fight against Zero. So the stage itself is nothing too spectacular. Like, you have one well-timed double jump that you need in order to not get sniped from behind. But otherwise, it's a pretty chill stage, and the only real threat is losing time to Zero. So we do get a lucky draw with getting Barrier with my initial tip draw. Zero, I guess I should explain now. Zero has a pretty stupid attack. He has an attack called Phantom Zero. It does 300 damage, which one-shots me from my HP. Like, I don't even have enough HP to survive. And it is completely undodgeable. The only way to dodge it without some kind of defense item would be to damage boost right off Zero. And even that's pretty risky because the timing on that's pretty tight. So, thankfully, because of Barrier being drawn early on, we can avoid Phantom Zero that way. Like I said, the rest of the stage is nothing particularly special. We grab 1 HP memory on the way because it's just right above the exit portal. So fighting Zero's not... You can get him in this loop. You don't want to use chips to get him, because whenever you use a chip to make him flinch, he moves very slowly in weird ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to bait him with... we're going to make him block with a regular shot. And he'll try and... if you're too close, he'll try and slash at you immediately, and we don't want that. So we want to stand far enough away to where he will try and teleport either in front or behind us, and then try and do this 3-hit combo. And that's when we can unload a charge shot on him with no problem. And if we're standing at the right distance, then it's not a problem. Now, he does give me a couple Phantom Zeros. I have Barrier, but it is a time waste every time that happens, unfortunately. And there's nothing you can really do about it. So, unfortunate time lost to Zero, but this stage and fight went well enough. Can't really do anything about that. Alright, so we get a lot of cutscenes here, and then we're on to, I think, 3 more stages? Yeah, 3 more stages. Like a little bit of a little cutscene trip, and then 3 more stages. So that leaves Pharaoh Man, Shadow Man, and Life Virus at the end. So you may remember it didn't matter whether we really did Color Man or Like Man first. It matters for picking between Pharaoh Man and Shadow Man. We want to go do one last shopping trip as early as possible, and Number Man happens to be right on our way to Pharaoh Man, so we're going to go do that shopping trip now, because we want the extra mem ups for when we do the Shadow Man fight later. So that kind of plays into that. But it's just going to be a lot of cutscenes, so not a whole lot to talk about right here. I guess we can comment on getting into this run. It really wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be to pick up this run. You definitely want 2 memory cards to be able to do a lot of practice for each little segment. But really, studying the previous top 2 runs by Joka and Mabel got me a lot of the strats needed just by watching those. And I do plan on doing some tutorial videos. At the very least, I do have individual segments already videoed out, and I can post those for anybody who wants to see. But I do want to do like more in-depth tutorials as we after all this is done, because I really would like to see more people run this game. It's not a terribly great casual game, but it is a really fun speed run. Like, going for a good time is difficult because there's a lot of luck involved, but just casually running the game, it's a blast. It's been fun, and I really enjoy it. Alright, so we're on our way to Fairman's and do our shopping trip with Number Man. So, like I said, we had a little bit of a low money issue earlier. That kind of tied into this this shopping trip as well. And I didn't think it would actually ever happen, but hey, it's not some kind of good run unless there's one that's never happened before. So we do the shopping trip right here, and I actually end up with not enough Zenny to buy both HP memories that I'd want. Like, we're going to get 2 mem ups that I can afford, and then we're going to get 2 HP memories normally. But I can only afford 1 because I just did not get enough cash from my boss drops. Like, it's really strange that happened. So I panic for a bit. I go and get the other HP memory that I actually can't afford. And I'm thinking to myself, if I even have enough HP for the very end, because I need to take 2 very, very, very high HP damage boosts for the end. Oh yeah, I forgot I messed that up. I ended up using an extra double jump. I'll get into that later. But the short of it is that I need to take 2 very big damage boosts at the end, and I wasn't sure if I actually had the max HP to do that. So I'm kind of panicking in my head at this point. So that's why this is unfortunately the worst executed stage in the run, unfortunately. Like, we've already burned through an extra double jump that I would use later on. And there's just lots of little tiny things. Like, you can lose a lot of time in any of the levels just from a lot of little mistakes adding up. But there were a lot of really big mistakes here, too. Like, this was awful. I had the Spooky in the way. And I tried to get him in a better spot so I could get around him and the Ratty, but that was just a lot of dancing around and a lot of wasted time. Like, it was really sucked. He usually moves into a better spot, but you do what you can do. So because of that, I opt not to try and slide through that spike and end up just sliding through this one instead. So I figured I'd try and make up at least a little time. I figure the run had been going well, so I might as well try and make up the time or just die trying. So, thankfully, I did have a Heat V, so we could kill that Kill Fluor. We normally want to just double jump over him, but I didn't have the extra double jump, so luckily we got bailed out by Heat V and I could just get around him easy. So, got my confidence back a little bit. We pre-reg Barrier for the rest of the level. Barrier is extremely useful for just getting through everything without having to stop. Because otherwise you'd be getting a lot of damage in. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that first damage boost I took against one of those like spike rollers, but it took about a third of my HP, so we do not want to get damaged by them. So the rest of this level is just a bit of tight platforming, going around in a circle until we get to the boss portal. Nothing particularly interesting. Just losing some time here and there to not so good platforming. So if there was definitely a place to save time on, this would be it. Like, I think all the mistakes added up would probably be about 10 to 15 seconds. We did get a lucky health drop from the Kill Floor, so we could skip that one, so that made up a little bit of time. So we're coming up on Pharaoh Man. We don't need chips to fight Pharaoh Man, thankfully. He does have a lot of HP. He has 1,000. So it takes quite a few charge shots to get through him. And the only attack we want to really see from him are the laser coffins. We don't want to see him drop Ratties because they'll kind of get in the way. And we didn't see any Anubis statues. Like, he only dropped laser coffins, which is really nice luck. Like, if he just does that or does nothing and floats around the room, you can just keep pounding him with charge shots over and over. Because if he throws an Anubis statue down, you have to hit the Anubis 3 times, and you don't have enough rapid fire to hit it 3 times before it automatically damages you. So it's just a big time waste and just kind of makes it scarier. So this is the only time we pre-reg Stargirl, since it has the 32 megabyte limit. Stargirl functions pretty much exactly as Super Arrow did in Mega Man 5, if you're familiar with that, which means we're going to use it to cross a very, very long horizontal room and save a bunch of time. We also do get a bit of good luck here. We do want Mega Cannon for the Shadow Man fight, and we do get in our draw, so we don't have to reg for that. So that's a pretty nice time save right there. This also has the last Cannon 3 that we need to get a Mega Cannon from. I need 5 of them, and thankfully I got every single one from all the enemies in the way throughout the route, so I didn't have to farm for any, so that works out pretty nicely. So we're going to carefully get around this guy, and we're going to Star Arrow across, and this is a pretty nice skip because it just skips all these long railway sections where I'd be waiting for cycles and such. So that's our one use of that, and it's really nice. And unfortunately, you only get one shot at it, so if you mess it up, the run's pretty much over. But we made it through, and we get the fast cycle right here. And we just managed to save a good chunk of time, not having to wait for that last platform. So thankfully, Shadow Man does not have a whole lot of HP, which is good because he's an extremely scary fight. We're going to get him into this stun lock with the Mega Cannons at the very beginning. And then we still need to land 1 charge shot and 1 regular shot. So this is one of the only time where we intentionally use the standby mode, where you can change chips and freeze time. So it's pretty safe. So we actually use that to see where the last Shadow Man spawn actually is, so we can dodge it, and then we can just unload a charge shot and a regular shot straight into him. So the fight went pretty much perfect, since we kept him in the stun lock and we got the last couple shots off real quick. Alright, so at this point, you may remember that I'm still panicking about the HP situation and not having the full 320 that I would normally have. I only have 300. I didn't know at the time exactly how much damage the Wood Aura viruses would do. So I pick up 1/2 energy right here. So we would want to buy 1 fast gauge and then as many full cuts as possible, and we'd normally have enough for 5. Unfortunately, because I needed that half energy for safety, we were only able to get 4 full cuts. And unfortunately, the biggest source of RNG is right here at the end of the run, because I need to draw the Zeta Cannon PA. So that means I need to get regular cannon, high cannon, and mega cannon in my my chip draw at some point before the final gauntlet of fights. So that's why we pick up the fast gauge and the full cuts, so we can cycle through the chip draws really quickly at the end and try and grind it out. So this is a pretty tight segment here with the double jumps. I do use the fast gauge here so that it's ready by the time I get past all the enemies. But this segment was definitely a huge panic because I ended up screwing up part of this and I got hit early. So I ended up taking a double damage boost to that Wood Aura. And I do have the half energy, so I got bailed out hard right here. So I did have enough for 2 damage boosts anyways. I didn't need the extra half energy if I had played correctly, but I'm glad I got that for safety. So we're past all the dangerous enemies. I'm cycling through chips that I don't need to try and get the Zeta Cannon PA parts, and I get incredible luck here. Like, I open this and I am just stunned that I have all 3 cannons that I need, plus Heat V and Tree Bomb. And that's the ideal draw. Like, if you don't get Heat V or Tree Bomb, it's fine. You can go on without them, and it's not much slower. But if you don't have Zeta Cannon, you really cannot do the end of this this gauntlet here. So Zeta Cannon lets me spam the Mega Cannons, since I only have 5 normally, but I can just spam right in the face of Firewall, and I can just stay invincible the whole time. And that pretty much makes up all the time that you would need for drawing Zeta Cannon. So very, very much worth it. So we get a refresh on our chips right here. The 8 boss fights coming up are just the first 8 bosses. A few strats have changed depending on what kind of draws you get, and you'll be using Charge Buster for a lot of these fights too. Heat Man, he goes down pretty quick. Nothing much to say about him. Gutsman's going to be pretty much the same too. Since I did get Heat V and Tree Bomb, the fights that would actually matter for those are pretty much the same. No, I actually take that back because Ele Man's actually different because, like I said very early on, a 4th Tree Bomb is ideal, but it's fine to have only 3, so we just do a different strat for Ele Man instead to compensate for only 3. I did take a couple more hits than I really wanted to, so I was a little panicky at this point because Ele Man can still probably one-shot me from this HP if you mess him up. So Bright Man goes down pretty quick again, and just manipulate him. Iceman goes down pretty quick again. Charge Buster with his low HP takes him out. Thankfully, Quick Man is not a threat at all because we have Zeta Cannon, so we just dump everything right into him. Like, it's not worth trying to fight him, just dump Zeta Cannons in. He still gives me a pretty bad pattern, though, so a couple seconds to be saved there. Color Man is actually less scary in the refight, not only from having more HP, but also because we're using charge shots, and charge shots don't make him flinch, so he's not counterattacking like he was in the first fight, so it's really nice. So he only gets like 1 or 2 actions off, and he didn't even attack for one of those actions. So we have this nice little loop for Ele Man where we fire a shot, slide ahead, unload a charge shot into him, and then we slide behind him so that we can shoot 1 shot and repeat the process. And this is a pretty tricky strat because you don't have a lot of leeway on the shot that makes him block and teleport behind you. It works out to where you have just enough time to charge a full shot, unload in his face, and then slide under him. Because if you try and shoot from closer, you're not going to have enough time to actually charge the full shot, and he ends up blocking it, and you're going to have to get around that and reset the cycle. So it was really nicely executed fight overall. I think I missed like 1 fully charged, but I had a half charge instead, but not a big deal. So we're coming up to the end of the run right here. The end of the run against Life Virus is pretty much a joke with Zeta Cannon. The only hard part is just doing this fight quickly. So we're going to combine Zeta Cannon and Charge Buster here. If you stand inside the hitbox for Life Virus, you can actually do a very quick charge shot and Zeta Cannon right afterwards. And you don't have to worry about your Zeta Cannon getting blocked, because it seems to get blocked if you're too far away. I have to research that a little bit more. But he goes down pretty quick, and then you just do charge shots on Life Virus too. Like, he follows the same pattern pretty much every time. An ideal kill gets him on the left on the second pass through. So it's a pretty easy fight as long as you just don't touch him. So yeah, that's the end of the run right there. It was a pretty good run overall. Like, there were some minor mishaps here and there, and Ferroman's stage was definitely not good. But overall, we got very good luck, especially at the very end when it counts for getting Zeta Cannon. And we got a couple lucky chip draws as well. So it was overall a very nice run. It's going to be very tough to improve on. My goal is to get sub 56. Like, that's definitely possible. Mabel says we can get a 54, but I don't see myself grinding that out. Like, that requires insane luck and execution, and I probably do not have the patience for that. I would be happy with a 55. But yeah, I will try and get tutorial videos at some point for this run. So I would love to see more people run this game. It's a really fun run. I've really enjoyed playing it so far. I definitely will be doing more with it. I will definitely be submitting it for SGDQ when that comes around, and maybe some other events when they come around. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I definitely want to do more commentary whenever I get another run going. But for now, you guys enjoy the rest of the credits sequence. Enjoy the great music. And I will see you all next time whenever I get another run. Thanks for tuning in, guys.